Welcome back to the Deep Dive. And if you're one of our listeners really trying to stay on top of things going on around the world, especially if you've got the UPSC exams on your radar, today's topic is going to be right up your alley. Man, this hits on current affairs, those mains topics, maybe even some prelim stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pretty big deal, actually, a trilateral meeting between Japan, South Korea, and China. And they all got together in Tokyo.
So I'm guessing those don't happen every day, right?
No, not at all. It's actually pretty rare to see these three powers sit down together like this face to face. It's always been a little tricky, with all the history between them.
Yeah, makes sense. And speaking of tricky, things haven't been exactly calm and peaceful over on the Korean peninsula lately.
You're telling me North Korea's been pretty busy. Just last week, on March 21st, they announced they tested these new anti-aircraft missiles.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the sixth weapons test already this year. And they even came out with a statement, the kind they usually do, talking about serious consequences for the U.S. and South Korea.
And wasn't that right around the same time the U.S. and South Korea were wrapping up their big military exercises?
It was on the exact same day, actually the last day of the Freedom Shield exercise.
Hard to believe that's just a coincidence.
Right. Seems more like they planned it that way, sending a message. Don't forget, North Korea and Russia are getting closer, too.
Okay, yeah, that adds a whole other layer.
Yeah.
What's the latest on that?
Well, there's talk that they might even be sending soldiers over to help Russia in Ukraine.
And I bet that's got a lot of folks worried about Russia maybe helping North Korea with their missiles.
Definitely a concern. So we've got this whole mix of historical tensions, current issues, and these shifting alliances. What was the point of this meeting in Tokyo? Like, what did they actually want to accomplish?
Yeah, I'm curious too, especially from the perspective of what our sources, the Economic Times and the Indian Express, are saying.
From what I gathered, it seems like their biggest concern is the whole situation with North Korea, just trying to calm things down in the region. Both Japan and South Korea made it clear keeping the peace on the Korean peninsula is a shared responsibility.
So even though that might seem obvious, I guess just saying it out loud like that means something.
It does, especially since they haven't always agreed on how to deal with North Korea. Maybe this means China is starting to realize they need to step up too.
That would be a pretty big shift. So we've talked about that recent missile test, but what else has North Korea been up to?
Well, just last month, they said they tested these strategic cruise missiles. And they were very specific, saying these were for a nuclear counterattack.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, that kind of language on top of the tests themselves definitely makes everyone nervous. And it always seems to happen when the U.S. and South Korea are doing their military drills.
Do you think it's more than just showing off? Like maybe trying to get the U.S. and South Korea to scale things back a bit?
It could be. I mean, it's got to be a bunch of things at once, right? Like proving their military tech is getting better, discouraging anyone from messing with them, but also, maybe putting pressure on Seoul and Washington to dial things down a notch. And let's not forget it plays well at home, too.
Makes them look strong.
Exactly. And then there's the whole thing with Russia and North Korea getting chummy.
That's a whole other can of worms. What's
Yeah.
making people so uneasy about that?
Well, it's not just military stuff. It's like they're getting closer on all these different levels, economically, diplomatically, and North Korea's standing with Russia in this whole Ukraine war really tells you something. The big worry is, what if Russia starts sharing sensitive tech with them?
Yeah, especially stuff that could help with those missile programs. That could really change the game, right?
Oh, yeah. It could have a huge impact on everything in Northeast Asia.
So back to this meeting. With all this history and tension and now Russia in the mix. Was this trilateral meeting even a big deal or just a bunch of talk?
It's a big deal because they actually sat down and talked. It might not be a complete reset, but at least they're acknowledging something needs to be done. It's a step towards, maybe working together a little better.
And I'm sure the things they said give us some clues about what they're thinking. Anything jump out at you?
Japan's foreign minister, Takeshi Iwaya, made a pretty interesting comment. He said something about this being a turning point in history and that talking to each other is the only way to bridge the divides. He even brought up Ukraine, saying it's not okay to change the status quo by force.
So basically, a message for everyone to respect international rules.
Pretty much.
Coming from Japan, that's significant. What about South Korea? What was their take on all this?
Their foreign minister, Cho Tae-yul, basically agreed about sharing responsibility for peace on the Korean peninsula. But he also said, straight up, that Russia and North Korea need to stop this illegal military cooperation. He didn't mince words. He was sending a message that Seoul is really worried about that partnership. And, Japan probably feels the same way. They both tend to be a lot tougher on North Korea than China is.
Okay, so what about China? What was their angle?
China's foreign minister, Wang Yi, talked about World War II and how it's been 80 years since it ended. He kept saying we have to learn from history if we want a better future, and he was all about these three nations working together to handle risks and build trust.
So stressing cooperation.
Exactly. But bringing up history like that could also be a reminder about all the baggage they still have to work through.
Makes sense. And the Economic Times mentioned something about how U.S. trade policies could be playing into all of this.
Yeah, good point. The fact that those U.S. tariffs are hitting China pretty hard, and South Korea and Japan a little too, it does make you wonder if that's pushing them to find other ways to work together. One expert, Patricia M. Kim from Brookings, said that it definitely adds another layer of complexity to the situation.
It's like a whole economic puzzle piece fitting in there.
Right. But they didn't actually talk about trade in the meeting, at least not publicly, so it might be a factor behind the scenes, but not the main thing they focused on.
So did they talk about what happens next? I mean, did they make any plans to keep things going after the meeting?
They did. They want to set up another summit, but this time with their actual leaders there, not just the foreign minister.
That'd be a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they've got more meetings coming up soon, too, including a big economic dialogue between Japan and China, the first one in 6 years. So it sounds like they're trying to look at the bigger picture, not just security stuff.
And besides North Korea, were there any other global issues they tackled?
Oh, yeah. They touched on all kinds of things. Climate change came up, and then there's the whole issue of their populations getting older. Plus, they discuss trade, disaster response, even science and technology. It shows they realize there's more connecting them than just these security concerns.
Okay, so listeners, especially those of you studying hard for your UPSC exams, what's the big takeaway from all this?
I'd say the main thing is that these three powerful nations, in a part of the world where things are really tense, are trying to work through some tough issues, especially with all that's going on with North Korea. Don't forget, we've got U.S.-China relations in the mix. The war in Ukraine's still going on. It's all connected. And for those of you gearing up for the UPSC, this is textbook international relations and security studies.
Absolutely. Pay attention to how this plays out in current events, folks.
Mm.
There's a good chance those prelims might throw in a question or two about these shifting alliances.
It all makes you wonder, can these three countries, with all their history and different points of view, actually work together in the long run? And how will all of this affect the bigger picture in the Indo-Pacific region? Those are some pretty big questions.
Lots to ponder. And if you like hearing us break this down, please give us a like and subscribe, and drop a comment if you've got questions. We love getting those and keeping the conversation going. We got all our info for this deep dive from the Economic Times and the Indian Express.